New Michigan State football coach Jonathan Smith is killing it on the recruiting trail, doing a great job on the job. Plus, Matt Rhule and his staff went through some extreme measures to steal their five-star quarterback from Georgia. You'll want to hang around for this story. And Marvin Harrison Jr. with some news we think maybe might be a head scratcher. All this coming up. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. Thank you. We always appreciate that. Plus, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started. All right, we're going to look deeper into the Michigan State football program and Jonathan Smith, who's been on the job just like a few weeks and right in the middle of everything that's going on in college football. Plus, the way the Nebraska Cornhuskers secured Dylan Raiola is a great story, I think. It's one of my favorite stories. And is Marvin Harrison staying at Ohio State? I hope he doesn't. Not because I have anything against Ohio State. We'll talk about his decision-making process. Plus, our Big Ten Network's classics and live programming coming up this weekend. Be sure to subscribe down below. Thank you very much. And follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every week. So being a new football coach in December has to be like drinking water out of a fire hose. And at Michigan State, Jonathan Smith is just one of those guys trying to catch his breath. He was only hired on November 25th. All right. A lot of these new coaches, they get hired, they got to jump right into it. So let's talk about him for a minute, because I think it's been a pretty impressive start thus far if you really want to get into it. You know, he wrapped up things at Oregon State. He became the new coach at East Lansing. He introduced himself to his new team and then the media and everybody and assessed what he has on the team, by the way, including who's coming and going in the transfer portal. Walked right into that. Then he has to learn the region within a 5-hour car ride, get to know as many high school coaches as possible. By the way, he's never recruited east of Montana, so he's figuring all this out on the fly. He's got to talk to all the current commits and see where they stand, whether they're going to stick with him or move on. And he's got to assess, if they want to just continue with their plans, or maybe they wanted to come to Michigan State, no matter who was the coach. Others are just going to bolt and want to go somewhere else. There's a lot of that going on. It's not his fault. It's just the way it is. Kids get attached to coaches just as much as they do schools when they're being recruited. So you got to find all this out. Then he's got to find new kids in the transfer portal that can help his team right away. After all, team was not very good, so he's got to upgrade in a lot of areas. And most of this he has to do by himself, because as soon as he's hired, he's got to hit the ground running. And he hasn't hired a staff yet. I mean, he has to do that on the fly while all this is going on. Now, he's got it in place now, but I'm talking about in the earliest days when you've got to do all these things. You're by yourself. You're a man on an island. So you got to then interview and hire a brand new staff and get all that in place, get everybody situated. It's a big move coming out to Michigan from wherever you are, right? But, and hey, thank goodness he doesn't have a bowl game to get ready for as well. Some coaches take over programs that might be in a bowl, and it's a lot to do. I've argued a lot when we talk about college football. You compare it to the NFL. The NFL has everything spread out. You got the season, you got free agency, you got combines, you got the draft, all this stuff. You got mini camps. It's every month there's something. But in college football, half of it is just shoved into the month of December. It needs to be spread out a little bit. I'm still always wondering, how do you go out and, you got to get transfer portal kids at the same time you're recruiting high school kids in. And, one may want to see if the other one's coming. It's a log jam is what it is. But Oh, that's aside for another topic on another day that we will talk about here on Lockdown Big Ten. Look, Michigan State can be a great job, and it has lots of resources and facilities and a very passionate fan base, right? And, that fan base largely hates Michigan. You have that in common, not the state, but the school. And there lies the biggest challenge right now in the Big Ten because instead of having to take over a Michigan State program and catch up to Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State and pulling even with the Iowas and the Wisconsins of the world, Big Ten is, of course, adding more powerhouses this summer with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. So the Spartans' job just got a whole lot harder. And even though Jonathan Smith is new, we'll take a look at how he's doing so far. I mean, first things first. Since he took the job, of course, all three scholarship quarterbacks decided to bolt and hit the transfer portal. And so he's got to find himself a quarterback, right? So Noah Kim, he's going to Coastal Carolina. Sam Levitt announced he's going to Arizona State. And Caden Hauser just announced he's going to East Carolina. But there's good news. He's got a quarterback. He did it. He talked to his promising young quarterback, Aiden Chiles, back out at Oregon State to follow him to East Lansing. So that's a big load off right there. According to some, Chiles is the most sought after quarterback in the transfer portal. So he got that. He's a true dual threat guy. So good. He's got the quarterback at Michigan State. Next, he landed his tight end out of Oregon State, Jack Velling, 6'4" target, huge guy, 241 pounds. You can't play in the Big Ten without a good tight end. You just can't. You got to have that. And by the way, this kid Velling is a 2-year starter, got a lot of experience. And this past season, he hauled in 29 catches for 438 yards and eight touchdowns. So he can score. He's got a nose for the end zone. Got 2 years of eligibility left. That's all good. And that's also good because Malik Carr, who was there, one of the better players at Michigan State, he hit the transfer portal and left. So that's portal news. That's getting started. Let's find a quarterback. All that taken care of for Jonathan Smith and Michigan State. Now let's talk a little bit of recruiting. And by the way, anytime we talk recruiting here on Lockdown Big Ten, always excited about it. It's always brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So Smith inherited Michigan State's second best recruit before his arrival. It's a 4-star receiver in Nicholas Marsh. He signed on Wednesday. He's good. He's one of these kids, no matter who's coaching, he wanted to go to Michigan State. And he's from River Rouge, and he just wanted to go there. And so that's okay. That's one less thing you got to worry about. All right. Michigan State has also landed a Honolulu offensive tackle, Rustin Young, highest rated prospect for Jonathan Smith in this period of time here. He's another one that appeared to have been going to Oregon State, but changed his plans and decided to follow Smith to East Lansing. And he joins 3-star offensive tackle Peyton Stewart and 3-star interior lineman Raheem Johnson, as well as 3-star edge rusher, also from Honolulu, Kike Burnett, and plus a 3-star linebacker in Connor Enyard. So, by the way, let's come in close here for just a minute. 2 kids from Honolulu. I'm just kind of curious. Do they know what winter is like in Michigan? Just throwing that out there. Maybe you leave that out of your pitch. Maybe the kids want to see snow. I don't know. Nevertheless, they got a quarterback? Check. Tight end? Check. Wide receiver? Check. Offensive lineman? Check. Defensive lineman? Check. Linebacker? Check. Got a lot of bases covered here. I'd say that's a pretty good day for a guy that just jumped into the job 3 weeks ago. So that's pretty good. And, overall, Michigan, as these signing days here in the back half of this week, Michigan State expected to get about at least 12 new recruits all signed up. So look, when you take a job brand new like that and you don't have a timeline to get anything going, especially if you've never really recruited in the area, it can be, I don't want to say a wasted year, but you take the job and you go, you see what you have in year one, and then you make your moves from there. But that's not what Jonathan Smith did. Got to give him a lot of credit. I think Michigan State fans should be pretty enthusiastic about what is going on here. And as a matter of fact, I can't wait for the schedule to come out. You quick peek already. They open up August 31st against Florida Atlantic. and they host Ohio State and Iowa, and they hit the road for Oregon and Michigan this upcoming season. So always excitement there with the schedule. And before you know it, we'll be doing our summer preview shows here, our podcast on Locked On Big Ten. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this. You can hit me up on Twitter or X at TalkBig10 10, or website TalkBig10 10, and comments on YouTube as well. What kind of surveillance tactics did Matt Rhule and Nebraska use to go ahead and protect Dylan Raiola from other schools? The 5-star quarterback that just flipped from Georgia? They went above and beyond to make sure they got their guy. This is a great story. We'll have all that. Plus, we have a little bit more movement to talk about around the Big Ten. And is Marvin Harrison Jr. staying at Ohio State? We'll discuss that. That's coming up in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. You know, these days, every new potential hire could feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. Like these guys at the transfer portal and recruits, you want to get talented people, but you want them to fit in together. Be a good locker room person as well. Same thing with an office. Anytime you got to hire people, you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. So you post a job, you add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. That spreads the word that you're hiring out there. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire for the job. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day, especially you everydayers out there. And meanwhile, if you haven't, we always ask, this helps us out so much. If you could just subscribe, just click it. You're in the Big Ten Club. You're with us. You're on our team, if you will. And it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. So if you could subscribe before you go, that'd be fantastic. Meanwhile, no matter how you watch or listen to this podcast, we invite you to share and follow and like Locked On Big Ten and spread the word. Certainly, you know somebody else like you that likes Big Ten or was a graduate, alumni, whatever, that might be interested in this podcast. Turn us on to them. That's how this word of mouth works, and it really helps us out. We really appreciate it here. Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. Your teams every day. We cover them all. So it's well documented here that Matt Rhule and Nebraska, they pulled off the heist of the early recruiting season by flipping 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola from Georgia, and kind of got to thinking, how did they do it? Well, it was a roller coaster ride that started a long time ago. As we mentioned on our story earlier this week, you go back and find another edition. All of our editions of Locked On Big Ten are on our website, by the way. They're all just listed right there. Some are, you can find them by school or just in a long list. It's talkbig10 10.com. Check it out. And you can check out those past podcasts as well. But back to this roller coaster ride to get Raiola. You know, he was originally going to Ohio State. He could change his mind a lot. And then he opened himself back up to 4 other schools, including Georgia and Nebraska. And the Huskies thought they had him in the spring until there was an announcement that he was going to Georgia. They were very disappointed. Husker Nation, you know, thought it was game over back then. All right, time to look for somebody else. Let's see what we have. But eventually, Rhule, who, of course, is new to the Husker program, gave Raiola another try. He wasn't going to give up. And he visited him in Beaufort, Georgia, to take one more trip out there and talk to him one more time and try and talk the young man into coming to Lincoln. Rhule brought Donovan Raiola, his offensive line coach, but also Dylan's uncle, Uncle Donovan, and brought him with him. And then after the visit, Rhule decided, Rhule had to go back to Nebraska, but he left Uncle Donovan there. Says, no, you stay here. So he stayed there in Georgia, in Beaufort, Georgia, and he moved in for a little while with his brother, Dominic, who is Dylan's dad. Dominic Raiola used to play center for Nebraska and had a 14-year career with the Detroit Lions. Anyway, he moved in with his brother and watched his nephew Dylan and just stayed there with him and made sure that nobody else had access to him. Just blocked him off from the rest of the world. Just held them together until it was time to make a decision and change your mind and ignored any input from Georgia right under Kirby Smart's nose too, right there in Beaufort, Georgia, and announced that he was flipping again and going to Nebraska. I thought it was a great story, and I guess that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Yesterday, we featured a story on Locked On Big Ten about Ohio State and their quarterback situation in 2024. Again, you can go back and find that podcast too, Locked On Big Ten, on our website, talkbig10.com. In addition to recruiting and transfer portal news, the word is that Heisman Trophy finalist Marvin Harrison Jr. is still considering a return to Columbus instead of going to the NFL. Well, again, we've talked about this because this story's been out there for a few weeks, and apparently it's still out there. Look, kid's going to be like a top 3 NFL pick. It's going to be worth $25 million guaranteed money, right? And the word is he's still considering to come back for another year at Ohio State because it really burns him that he's never beaten Michigan. It burns him that he's never won a Big Ten title. And so he wants to do all these things before he goes pro. I would tell him, go pro. Injuries, the money's too big, just go. But he's not me. He's himself. And there is some nil money available to him. That's what's running this story to stay at Ohio State. Now, there's no way it's going to be enough nil money to match what he would get in the NFL. Not even close. But he could be quite comfortable financially at Ohio State for another year. I mean, they're talking in the millions. He could be a 21-year-old millionaire on campus. Not bad. It's not a bad lifestyle. But again, I would get myself in that NFL draft and avoid any injuries. You've had a great career. Just go. But we'll keep you posted on here on Locked On Big Ten. Another player getting ready for the NFL draft is Maryland quarterback Talia Tagovailoa. At Maryland, he's the Big Ten's all-time leading yardage passer. And he's going to opt out of the Terps Bowl game versus Auburn in the Music City Bowl on December 30th in Nashville and get himself ready for the NFL draft. I think that's the right move. I don't besmirch any kid who makes that decision. Also, that means redshirt sophomore Billy Edwards Jr. and redshirt freshman Cameron Edge will play in his place versus Auburn. The two combined for 13 pass attempts this year. So whoever starts that game, going to hit that number in the first half with that Maryland offense, right? The Terps did pick up North Carolina State quarterback MJ Morris in the portal, but he won't play. He's just getting there. Hey, and some good news for the Indiana Hoosiers. Running back Trent Holland, interesting story. 1 week after announcing he was transferring to Minnesota, he said he changed his mind. He's coming back to Indiana. He was the Hoosiers' leading rusher in 2023. He said his change of heart had nothing to do with nil money. It wasn't negotiations going back and forth or anything like that. This was personal, and it just worked out. He just changed his mind. He's going to come back to Bloomington. All right. Meanwhile, as we keep track of all this that's going on in the portal and recruiting, basketball season is underway. Got a half a dozen men's basketball games tonight if you're watching this on the day of the release on Thursday. We got New Orleans at Ohio State for a 6:00 game. Jacksonville at number 1 Purdue, 6:30 on the Big Ten Network if you want to watch that one. Stony Brook is at Michigan State. It's still Tom Izzo and the guys got that big win last week against number 6 Baylor. Lemoyne is at Penn State at 7:00. That's on Peacock. And Ball State is at Minnesota for an 8:00 tilt. Both those teams are 8-3, by the way. And North Alabama is at Indiana, 8:30 Big Ten Network. Indiana, a weird stretch here. They went toe-to-toe with number 2 Kansas and Bloomington. Actually blew a 13-point lead in the second half. Lost the game at the end. Then they come out a couple nights later just flat as can be against Morehead State. They needed a 20-4 run in the final 8 minutes to go ahead and win that game by a point. And Morehead State had the ball with the final seconds. They could have beat them if they hit a shot. And now taking on North Alabama. They need to take them very seriously Okay. Over the women here Thursday night, 5 teams in action, highlighted by Loyola Chicago versus number 4 Iowa and Caitlin Clark and company at 6 o'clock. By the way, Loyola Chicago, that's Sister Jean, right? She's a 103-year-old nun who's sitting in a wheelchair in the front row of all the men's games. Did she go to the women's games as well? I don't know. I haven't seen her on those, but we'll see if she goes to this game to check out Caitlin Clark in Iowa. And Eastern Illinois at Wisconsin, that is at 7:30 as well. Also, if you haven't caught this yet, this is pretty cool because, as you know, we're part of the Locked On Network, and Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts on Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. That's what we do. Our show is on there from time to time. You'll see it. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And I think you'd be glad to. But subscribe here too. Subscribe to Locked On Big Ten and subscribe to Locked On Sports Today. All right. We're going to take a look ahead to the Christmas weekend and the schedule on the Big Ten Network. And that includes Big Ten Classics we always like to look at and their live broadcasts. So all that coming up in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. I want to tell you about FanDuel. You know, the weather's getting colder in some places, even in Florida where I live. It's getting a little chilly. And, of course, the NFL offers are hot on FanDuel. Okay, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, stop thinking, just do. Join FanDuel. There's no better time to get into the action. And they have everything laid out. It's easy to read. It's very simple. You find your game. You can do straight up wins and losses. It's called money line. You can look at the point spreads, get better odds. They have player props, over under totals on the totals of the score. Lots of stuff up there. But here's what I'm going to do. Thursday night tonight, football, Saints and Rams. Rams are at home -4. That means they're a 4-point favorite. Take them. There's a handful. I can count on one hand the teams that are hotter than the Rams right now with Matthew Stafford and that receiving core. They're at home, 4 points. They'll cover that. And the Saints aren't that good. Sorry. So Saints at Rams. Rams 4-point favorites. Take the Rams by 4 on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the rest of the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so let's take a look at the Big Ten schedule coming up this weekend. A lot of classics. Back into the classics live because schools, we're not playing as many games. I mean, we're playing some. Got the Christmas break. So we'll put this on screen. If you're listening on audio only, we will explain it as best we can. And here you go. We'll start it off Friday, the 22nd. These are all Eastern times at 1 p.m. in Ohio State Football Classic. It is the January 1, 2019 Rose Bowl, Ohio State versus Washington. That's where Dwayne Haskins threw for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. By the way, that was Urban Meyer's last game as head coach. All right, so look at that one. We continue with the Ohio State theme at 2 o'clock, Ohio State Football Classic. This is the January 1st, 2010 Rose Bowl, Ohio State versus Oregon. That one, Terrell Pryor throwing for 266 yards and 2 touchdowns. Going ahead at 4 o'clock in Illinois Basketball Classic way back in 1988. Illinois versus Missouri. Remember Kenny Battle? Kenny Battle scored 28 points and Lowell Hamilton scored 21 as the Illini win a top 10 matchup. Both teams were in the top 10 at the time. And it's 6 o'clock on Friday, p.m. Eastern time. Big Ten women's basketball live Bowling Green at Indiana to take on the Lady Hoosiers. And then at 8 o'clock, men's basketball, Chicago State at Wisconsin. Chicago State beat Northwestern. All right, so we'll see what Chicago State does against Wisconsin on Friday night. Let's go to Saturday and Sunday, the 23rd and 24th, Christmas Eve. We'll start it off on Saturday At 10 a.m. Eastern time, we got a Michigan Football Classic. It is the January 1st, 2008 Capital One Bowl. Michigan versus Florida. Chad Henne was the quarterback of the Wolverines then, threw 373 yards that day. Mike Hart ran for 120 in a win, and that was Lloyd Carr's last game. So, look, this weekend you can watch a game that was Urban Meyer's last game at Ohio State. You can watch one that was Lloyd Carr's last game at Michigan. At 12 o'clock, some Big Ten men's basketball. Mississippi State is at Rutgers. At 3 o'clock, Rutgers Football Classic airing. The 2014 Quick Lane Bowl, Rutgers versus North Carolina. Freshman Josh Hicks rushing for an amazing 202 yards and a touchdown in that game for Rutgers. And at 7 o'clock, we have an Iowa Football Classic, January 1st, 2005, the Capital One Bowl. Iowa versus LSU. Drew Tate had a 56-yard game-winning touchdown pass on the last play to defeat Nick Saban. That's right. Saban was a coach at LSU at that point. 30-25 in Orlando. Definitely want to check that out. Now, let's go to Sunday. Sunday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, and we pick it up late here at 8 o'clock. Maybe you're sitting by the fire, just hanging out, waiting for Christmas to get here, waiting for Santa Claus. You can watch the Ohio State Football Classic from 2006, Michigan at Ohio State. Troy Smith, 318 yards passing and 4 touchdowns in that game. At 10 o'clock, Christmas Eve night, a Michigan Football Classic. In 2003, the Ohio State-Michigan game, John DeVere, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns. 5th-ranked Michigan beat 4th-ranked Ohio State, 35-21. And as we get a little closer to midnight and Santa, 11 o'clock, we got a Michigan Football Classic, the 2023 Ohio State-Michigan game that was just played last month. Of course, Michigan comes out on top, and that's why they got to play in the Big Ten Championship and move on into the college football playoffs. So that's how we got where we're at. Hope you enjoy it. That's the schedule on the Big Ten Network. Lots of classics and a little bit of live action as well. So that should be a good time. Check that out. Enjoy it. All right. In the meantime, as we're getting closer to this weekend, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at TalkBig10 or X, TalkBig10 10. Our website, TalkBig10 10.com. Hey, peruse, if you're just flipping around, you got a few days off, go back to that website, TalkBig10.com, and we got everything we've ever done there, plus some other surprises for you on the website, TalkBig10 10.com. And also your comments on YouTube are welcome as well. Before you go, please feel free to subscribe and help us out and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. And don't forget that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today, 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts at Locked On, including me and this show. So you can check it out there as well. Spread the word. Have a great day. Thank you for checking us out, and I can't wait until we meet next time. As always, for Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman.